Thank you all for coming to the celebration of life for I call Uncle Tom. My name's Chris Gamache, and I am Tom Feagley's nephew. His baby sister was my mother, Kathy. Tom was always asking people to spread peace. In that memory, he would bring us every now and again a rock with the word peace painted on it to go in our gardens. My wife Christina and one of her friends painted a ton of those, and they are in the back corner for people to take today and spread peace wherever you go, in the gardens or someone else's house. Before I say a few words that I've written down, I wanted to read something that we felt really described Tom in his essence completely. This was actually written by my grandmother, Tom and Mike's mom, in 1979. That blade of grass, that yellow flower, that of blue, what are they? Always the little things that escaped most of us intrigued you. Time was something to be used to investigate what was important to you. And the beat of that heart was the pulse of life. For you, the way to live was not in competition. Everyone is his own man. He is what he is, and you are beautiful. So many didn't understand, couldn't until much later. From the blade of grass, the flower, the ant, to the fellow man, without losing sight of all the lovely, important little things, love and compassion, you are these. Whether Tom got his creative juices from my grandmother? Probably. Tom was always the wild card at family events growing up. His arrival and departure time was his own and never based on a schedule. Phone calls would go unanswered for a week or two, then eventually get returned when he came back from a protest or retreat, or after he was bailed out. My most significant memories of Uncle Tom are actually from the last 30 years. He spent increasing time with us after my mother, his baby sister, passed away in 2002, and then more time after my grandmother, his mother, passed in 2008. Tom took a cross-country trip with our family in an RV in 2015. During that trip, he tried to get copper sheeting while dumpster diving at the University of Notre Dame and put it into our RV. He figured we could resell it and pay for our gas. After that stop, our next stop was visiting Uncle Mike and Aunt Kathy in Chicago. After recovering a few days there, we continued on. We went through the Badlands, and then Uncle Tom was insistent, and I'm glad he was, that we had to go to Wounded Knee to look at some of the reservation lands and their national park per se. But it was just stark difference between those two cultures and those two sites. So it was amazing to see, and I'm glad he took us there. Tom later joined us in Ireland. And on our first night in Dublin, we were told, don't leave your bags in the car if you're anywhere near the Guinness brewery, because the cars get broken into. Well, we all took our bags out, except for Tom. The next morning, our car had been broken into, and everyone had their bags except Tom. I can only imagine the look on the face of the thieves when they opened up the backpack to see what they had got. From there, we went to the Cliffs of Moher for Tom to revisit where he had been in 1978. He did some more drawings. We were at the Blarney Stone. We were in Galway. We left him at the Dublin airport, assuming he would be fine. He told us just to leave him in Ireland because he was going to spend a few weeks looking for people that he had met in 1978. Okay. He did find some, and he did return home a number of weeks later. But that was Tom. In October, when Tom got sick or notified us that he was sick, we helped him clean out his apartment, which was an endeavor that I won't get into. However, we moved this painting, unbeknownst to me what it was. When Tom came back in after spending the weekend at our house, he stomped around the apartment and tore it apart again for about 3 weeks, saying, "Where is Ireland?" I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen the painting before. It is my most prized possession. Well, then how did you lose it? I went to the storage unit we were at. I went through his apartment. I went back to Savers. Heaven forbid I might have gotten rid of it and donated it. Because he said it was orange and green, and it's called Ireland. Okay, I'm looking for a landscape. I looked for a long time. And finally, I was visiting him at his place one evening, and he goes, well, and every time I was there, he said, well, look around, decide what you want to take. Don't really need anything else. He goes, well, what of my artwork do you want? I said, there's one you've got in the bedroom here. I just emptied out the storage unit. I said that I think's really cool, and I'd love to have it because it's different than a lot of the other paintings we have from you. He goes, well, bring it out. I bring it out, I turn that around, and he screams, Ireland! And my response was, that's that effing painting I've been looking for? And Tom painted that in 1978 after his divorce, and many of you probably did not know that Tom was married before. But he went to Ireland, kind of soul-searching. And at that time, Ireland was in the middle of their troubles. So that is Tom's representation of the struggle Ireland was facing between Northern Ireland, Great Britain, and it is his most prized painting and piece of art that he had, or at least so he has told me on multiple occasions. Despite how challenging the last few years, and specifically the last 9 months, were with Tom's health, the plus I'm taking away from this endeavor is that we learned a lot more about him. He would always come back and tell us of the stories of where he was protesting. Was he at the White House chained to a fence? Was he in some other town this time? His travels to Belize or somewhere else. And who he worked with at Bread of Life, who he did the Black Lives Matter with, something else, those were just stories. But through all of this in the last few months, those stories have come to life because we've actually met and talked with most of you. We've heard stories about how Tom touched your life and what he meant to you. So that has really enriched what memories I have of Uncle Tom. And I thank you all for sharing those in your past with him with us, because it has helped us. And despite how difficult this has been with Tom's passing, it has actually become much easier for us because we've learned a lot more about him and the man he was. So thank you for all your stories. Tom was a colorful spirit, and his spirit and memory will continue to live on as long as we all do something a little colorful every day. I will conclude my comments with that, and I will ask Tom's older brother, my Uncle Mike, to come up and say more than a few things.
I'm Mike. Tom was born 16 months after me, so he and I were 1 year apart. All the way through school, past high school, and into college. I knew him his whole life. When he died 1 month short of his 77th birthday, a little light went out of the world. But I have some Tom stories to tell you from his youth and as he grew into the man he became. Our family moved a lot when we were kids. We were always going to a new town, a new school, meet new people. Tom hated it. He didn't like being the new kid in school or the new kid in town. And he said it made him feel confused and lost. Tom, for the rest of his life, had a special place in his heart for those who were new to a town or new to a school or new to a country. He and I played on the same high school varsity teams for 3 years, soccer, basketball, and baseball. He was a wonderful teammate. He was always looking to block opponents or set teammates up for a shot in basketball and soccer. In baseball, he was a quick-handed second baseman who loved to drop sacrifice bunts for his teammates and to execute spectacular one-handed catches. He was a card player. He loved to play hearts. Tom was always drawing things and writing things By the time he got to high school, he was pretty serious about it. He developed very early a dislike of authority. He had a real authority problem. His teachers really liked him. He got really good grades, but Tom was always asking them nasty questions, challenging their answers and arguing with them. And if that wasn't bad enough, when he got bored, he would make that clear by drawing pictures on his papers and writing things on his notes. So I think that attitude followed him throughout the rest of his life. He got really serious about his painting and his poetry in his high school years. He loved painting in oils. This past month, when we've come to his house and his apartment and started looking through his stuff, we found more than 200 framed oil paintings and drawings, not framed, stretched, and more than 70 poems and song.
In my early 20s, I started sketching after having given up my short-lived hopes of being an artist. And these are sketches that I did back in 1973. It includes my mother's old mandolin, which I still have, and a pair of hiking boots that I had at that time, which I no longer have. After I finished my master's program in 1975, I immediately signed up for a 10-week painting course with a man named Alex Farquharson. And this is the first painting that I ever did, which was Studio Still Life. And then the second one also was Studio Still Life. And the third was of Alex, the instructor. After 2 more 10-week sessions, I decided I knew enough, I was capable enough, and I went on my own and started painting and actually started teaching painting through the mental health clinic. I mostly am drawn to landscapes. I love traveling, and I'm a terrible photographer and an absent-minded photographer, so I tend to do sketches. And when I went to Yosemite in the summer of 1976, I was awestruck by the sheer beauty of the place, and I did a whole series of sketches with colored pencils and made a bunch of notes. And over the course of time, I've done a half a dozen paintings from that. Another thing that sometimes catches my attention is photographs in newspapers telling stories. And this first one is about a young boy, I think he was 14, who had been a suicide bomber in Israel. And he had changed his mind and decided that he was not going to go through with it. And the photo showed him on the ground in his underwear, kneeling in front of 2 armed soldiers. I think in summary, what I would want to say is simply that I am really grateful for this opportunity. I was anxious coming into it, and the more I got into putting it together, the more excited I got, and the more pleased I was to be able to think that I actually have enough that I could do a show. And I think the more grateful I am to MATV for extending the offer to me. And it's an opportunity for me to share with the public things that they don't know about me. Most people don't know that I'm an artist, and yet that's a very important part of who I am.
He and I spent summers working on the Cape in restaurants. One summer, we were working on a restaurant in West Dennis, Massachusetts. I got a terrible sunburn, and Tom fell in love with the really pretty salad girl. They were married for 9 years. I should talk a minute about what happened when their marriage broke up. Tom's reaction to it was to quit his job of 8 years with the Massachusetts Department of Employment Security, leave the country, go to Scotland and Ireland, buy a rattly old used car, and travel around Scotland and Ireland for months, trying to get a handle on how he felt about the end of his marriage and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of his life. The result of that search led him back, led him to move to Malden, and it led straight to a decision on his part, two-part decision, spend the rest of his life helping people who needed help and to protest what was wrong and advocate for what was right. Those convictions led him straight to the Gathering Place, from there to the St. Paul Supper Program, and from there to the Bread of Life, which he led for 30 years. The folks from the Bread of Life are responsible today for handling the food and handling your meal. They're the folks that you see at the back of the room. Tom loved them all, and thank you very much. He once told me he was very proud of the fact that he'd been arrested and jailed more than 60 times in the course of his career. So, you know, for a guy who didn't have children of his own and was unmarried for most of his life, he had a huge, huge family of friends and relatives, many of who are here today. And thanks for coming. Tom loved the outdoors. I just have random memories of him. He loved the outdoors. He had the delight of a child as he sat in our backyard in Tennessee watching a very rare solar eclipse. He just was stunned by it and loved it. He showed the same childlike wonder when we came out here one time and took a whale watching trip out of Boston Harbor, and he stood in the rain on the deck and watched the huge whales come booming up out of the water. He loved music. I remember him walking up and down Broadway in Nashville with us one time, and he wanted to stop in every single one of the music bars, and there must be 20 of them along that road, not to have a beer, but to listen to the music. He liked guitar music so much that he taught himself guitar, or at least 3 or 4 chords on a guitar. And I can tell you that every single night of every single visit he ever made to us in Illinois or Tennessee, I would find him late at night in the wee hours of the morning playing that guitar and humming and singing his songs. He also loved Belize. He and a friend named Jim Freeman cleared land in the jungle, built a cabin, planted crops, met local people and made friends with them. He would go there every chance he got for years. He was there last fall when he fell seriously ill with what was later diagnosed as a very nasty form of cancer. He dealt with that terrible disease with courage and determination. He told everyone he was going to beat it. By force of will, he held it off for nearly a year before succumbing this year on Cinco de Mayo, where he slipped away quietly and peacefully in his sleep and in his longtime Malden home. I leave you with the words that Tom closed every one of his very long and very funny, but sometimes very sad letters that he sent me over the years. I'm going to leave these words to you. Peace, love, etc.
I not only want to offer my condolences on behalf of the city of Malden, but I also want to thank the Feagley family for sharing Tom with us all these years. And I'm not alone in that feeling. We are joined today by City Councilors Barbara Murphy, Peg Crow, Greg Spadafora, and we have State Senator Jason Lewis here. One of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou seems most appropriate today. She said, "If you find it in your heart to care for someone else, you will have succeeded." I think all of us here today would agree that Tom not only succeeded, but has left a lasting impact on our community. There is no one I know who is more passionate, dedicated, and consistent in helping people who needed it the most. And he didn't just advocate for one issue or cause, but rather it was anything that would lift people up, whether it was homelessness, food insecurity, civil rights, or world peace. Tom was there to speak out and always lend a helping hand. And he accomplished it all with humility and without fanfare. On a personal level, he made such an impression on me that I joined the Bread of Life and later became president of the board. I had to eventually leave the board when I became mayor, which I sometimes regret, but I never, ever stopped feeling inspired by his kindness, his advocacy, and his work in the community. We always think of champions in a national light, but we had our very own locally in Tom Feagley. He has left a lasting impression on Malden that will last into the future.
And in 1981, we, for a variety of reasons in our parish, decided to have a Wednesday evening family night. Word got out there was a dinner at St. Paul's on Wednesday night, and people started appearing looking for dinners. And I have to be honest, my original impulse was to tell them, sorry, this is a church program. God got mad at me and told me, I'm sending these people to you. So we wanted to do this right. So I connected with Tom. I knew Tom because he at that time was the head of a gathering place, which was a drop-in center. So I asked him to come to St. Paul's and train our team of cooks and leaders and lay leaders and me as a priest.
We actually got a grant that I wrote that some of our members would be doing all of the menu planning, food shopping, menu preparation, serving, and cleaning to do a free lunch 3 days a week in the city of Malden. It was
This is while you were still with
when I was
the other
at
organization.
the gathering place in
Okay.
Tri-City Community Mental Health. And it was a 6-month grant, so I went back to St. Paul's Church as the experts in this and asked them if I could just come and observe their process. How do you use your kitchen? How do you serve the people? How do you just run the whole show?
Right.
And adopt whatever we wanted? So I did that, and we served our lunch there 2 days a week, and at the Baptist Church one day, or originally one day at the First Lutheran, but proved to be too far from the downtown. And I went there thinking I would volunteer for the month of December of 1984, figure out what they were doing, and then do our program, and I simply never left.
But it was also the beginning of a wonderful, precious friendship between Tom and myself. As you all know, he was just a holy man. I mean, he was the kind of person, if you'd lived in the 12th century, would have been St. Francis. Eccentric, but extraordinary. And God just blessed that ministry and it became, as it is today, one of the most beautiful and powerful ministries to the poor here in the North Shore. And Tom is the heart of it, and was the heart of it. And as a Christian, I believe, of course, he's still alive in the Spirit. So he's still with us and praying for this ministry. So thank you, Tom, for all your blessings.
There was one story that Tom shared with me more recently that kept popping up in my mind. And that was a story that he told me about his house in Belize. As you know, Tom and a friend of his, Jim, built a house right on the border of the jungle in Belize some years ago. And Tom wasn't the greatest carpenter, and so he didn't do a lot of the construction, but he did most of the landscaping and planning around the gardens of the house. But finally the house was built, and now came to painting. And Tom, of course, being the artist that he is, said, "Oh, can I paint the bathroom?" Jim said, "No, Tom, I got this." Tom says, "Really?" He says, "Let me pick out the paint color." No, Jim says, "No, Tom, I got this." So about a couple of weeks later, Tom goes up to the house, looks into the bathroom, and notices it was beige. Philip, beige is not a color, okay? Beige is not a color. Tom's life, in my mind, he was filled with color. And I know in the brochures, we've kind of captured that theme of Tom and color. And he was, in fact, the most colorful hero of mine that I ever had. As many of you know, oftentimes when he was away from Bread of Life, and sometimes would be gone for a week or so because he was being processed, and do much time in local jails, and would often complain about how awful the jail food was, okay? It's like, so don't go to jail because the food's bad, Tom would say. I remember one trip that I took with Tom. We boarded the buses at Bunker Hill Community College, and it was the time of the Gulf War. You'd arrive in D.C. at about 7 a.m., you get breakfast, go to the rally, and then get back on the buses in the evening for the return trip. On this particular trip, we're getting off the bus. Tom leans over to me and says, "Bill, if I'm not on the bus, it's okay." Of course, Tom was not on the bus ride back. The following day, on the Sunday Boston Herald, on the front page, is a picture of Thomas Feagley being arrested at the White House, climbing the fence. And so a few weeks later, I came across Tom and I said, "Tom, what's with the White House?" He says, "Phil," he says, 10 years ago, I would have been over that fence. Many of us in this room have had that same experience of Tom, that he accepted us where we were, how we were, and what our contribution could be. And he made us feel great about whatever our part was and whatever contribution we could make. And that was really, in terms of color, his brilliance, right? Was that he was able to bring out in us what was deep inside, and he could see that. And I think one of the ways in which, or the qualities that Tom had that allowed him to do that so well, was Tom was a keen observer. Bread of Life and TRICAP collaborated on many projects and campaigns. He would show up to my office, unannounced, and take a seat. I would say, "Tom, I'm busy. I got things to do." And he would say, "I'm just here, Phil. Go, just do your work." But he did not come to talk. His presence was his support. How many of us here have been the beneficiaries of Tom just showing up to spend time with us? He keenly saw us at our most ordinary moments. Another kind of way that I like to think of Tom is that he didn't take himself too seriously, even when I wished he would. I knew the prognosis was not good, but Tom basically lived his life as though he would, in fact, live into his 90s. That had always been his hope and expectation. The last weeks when Tom was in the hospital and then finally the last week at home were especially inspirational, I think, and important to Tom and to me. The morning that he passed, that morning I said to Habib, "Tom died filled with love and surrounded by love." eat ice cream. Thanks.
Well, a hard act to follow with all of these stories and memories of our friend Tom, and I guess I and some of the others who are here are the reason that Tom would ever think to leave all of you here in Malden and go away, because he came to us, to the Atlantic Life community, to the Jonah House community, to the Witness Against Torture community, to get arrested all those times and to climb all those fences. And so if you've been arrested with Tom Feagley, I invite you to stand right now. Go ahead, Scott, Sheila, Jane, Hockey. Yeah. So, Tom, I definitely count myself among Tom's children, right? Like Tom's offspring, and I felt like he treated me like a daughter or a niece, and what a beautiful thing to be loved by him in that way. He also loved my uncle, Daniel Berrigan, the poet and priest. And Dan gave our family this great gift, and it was called the Go Round. Perhaps you're familiar with it. So everybody goes around and says something. Tell me why you love Tom Feagley. Be specific. And I was able to be specific because I had just followed Tom across the Cuban countryside, walking more than 100 miles behind him as we tried to get as close as we could to the prison at Guantanamo, holding at that time about 800 of our Muslim brothers. So I knew Tom at that time very, very well. I knew him as a humble powerhouse. I knew him as a gentle resistor, as a quiet leader, as a deeply spiritual and wryly irreverent human being. I knew he was a hard worker and tireless in his dedication to people, his dedication to all of you. And I knew he was a gifted artist. I knew this even though I hadn't seen his artwork yet. And I knew he was a generous dumpster diver, a consummate re-gifter, and a conduit of the most beautiful of capitalism's excesses, right? So in that night around our living room, my brother and sister and I shared what we loved about Tom Feagley. And we shared it in the house that Tom Feagley had helped to build. And somebody mentioned that he wasn't that great of a carpenter. I think he spent most of the time building the house tucking things behind the walls. So there were these little totems and figures and notes and poems that he stuck amongst the studs, little time capsules. When he came and visited, he and Philip came to Connecticut in December to visit my mom, to visit Liz McAllister, and they met. Again, after quite a long time of not seeing one another. And Tom, of course, was weakened by cancer, very thin, his red beret kind of, cocked to the side. And my mom was also weakened, but differently, because she has dementia and her memory is quite gone. But despite that, they connected. They connected in this deep, deep way. And for the whole rest of my life, I will be so grateful for that December morning, and grateful for Tom Feagley's friendship. And we're here together in this room, celebrating him and carrying out our own version of Liz McAllister's Go Round. What specifically do you love about Tom Feagley? And so we're here to remember him and celebrate him and express our gratitude for the gift. Like, what a gift this man was in each of our lives. So I'm so happy to be with all of you. Thank you.
So in my family, we called him Gut for Great Uncle Tom. He did not like that nickname. He always had the biggest heart, and he showed that every day. Best example I can really think of is on our trip to Ireland. Some of my best stories is, like my dad mentioned, we went on an RV trip a couple years ago across the country, and in the Badlands, we were admiring the view and just thinking how beautiful it is, and he threw deer poop at us. So, whether it's a trip across the country or to Ireland or just hanging out here, he always made everything really fun and interesting. Uncle Tom, of course, was very much into the arts, and he always encouraged me in the arts. Every time I saw him, I became more inspired to write, even if it had been a while since I'd written. My favorite one to show him was a poem I had written about my spirit animal, which we shared, the turtle. I am still so happy that I got to have him at my wedding, which he wore a bright neon yellow shirt to. And he got to meet my first child, who, like him, is very, very particular about chocolate versus vanilla everything. And like him, she will only drink the chocolate protein shakes.
So Tom would come to visit us out in Chicago, and on one of our visits, the five of us went out to dinner. We decided to go to a restaurant called Max and Irma's. It was a pretty typical American fare: burgers, wraps, chicken tenders, beer. But we didn't go there for the burgers or the chicken tenders. And biggest reason was the self-serve sundae bar. For just a few dollars, you got a chilled sundae glass, that big maybe. You could fill with several scoops of ice cream, chocolate fudge, whatever you'd like, half a dozen crushed candy bar toppings, and the best part was free and infinite refills. And we were excited to show our Uncle Tom the wonders of the sundae bar. But when the waitress came to take our order, Tom said he wasn't very hungry. But Tom, we said, you have to try the sundae bar. He said, okay, I'll just have a sundae glass then. So our food came, and Tom's tall, chilled glass arrived. We ate our sandwiches and salads. Tom filled up his glass. He finished his first full glass, and he went back up for his second round. We asked, are you sure you don't want to order some food? He insisted that he wasn't very hungry and that he was fine with just ice cream. Well, he finished his second glass and got up, we assumed, to go use the restroom. But he came back with a third full sundae. We were all impressed. 3 full sundaes was something we had never seen even attempted. But then Tom got up and returned with another full glass. Surely he wasn't going to finish the full thing, we thought. Well, he proved us wrong. By the time we left, he had filled and eaten 5 full ice cream sundaes. On his last trip to the sundae bar, we asked the waitress, have you ever seen anyone do that before? She said no. Tom stood alone. Thus, Uncle Tom cemented his legacy in our minds as king of the ice cream sundae bar. Max and Irma's would later change its sundae bar policy so that the ice cream was no longer self-serve. I can't help but think that the legend of Tom Feagley had something to do with that. Thank you.
I'm Ron Cox, former Executive Director of UMA, Urban Media Arts, formerly known as MATV. I first met Tom Feagley in 1985, and I was working at the Malden YWCA as the coordinator for a school-age child care program, and Tom had just started out at Bread of Life. He's the one that turned me on to the Boston Food Bank. When he found out I had access to a van, he said, come on, let's use it to go get some donated food. The only problem is, I was told I was only supposed to use it for transportation of the kids. He said, in typical Tom Feagley fashion, oh, who's got to know? So that's Tom for you. So sure enough, every month, we loaded up that van, filled all the seats with food donated for not only Bread of Life, but for the kids of the Malden YWCA program. As you all know, Tom wasn't a golfer, but he came to me and he said, Ron, we need you at the annual golf tournament fundraiser for the Bread of Life at the Mount Hood in Melrose. I said, Tom, I don't golf. And he goes, I don't either, but it's a good cause, and you'd be funny. And I said, all right, so I did it. I remember it was a gray, wet, drizzly day with a shroud of fog hovering over the forest behind us. And then from out of the mist, we noticed a figure slowly walking towards us. It was Tom. And if you all know, someone already mentioned it, he collected balls. Well, he comes walking out without saying a word, comes over to me, and he says, here are your balls. He turns around, goes walking back into the woods. And the golfer, the third golfer who never really was happy about my making fun of golf, said, all right, that's it, Cox, I'm done. What the hell just happened? I said, Tom, Jack, you remember that all those balls I'm hitting left and right? Those are my balls, and that's my ball guy. Another thing, Tom understood the importance of using media. Tom was one of the first to get involved in MATV. In 1991, the Gulf War was about to start, and Tom came to MATV and said, we got to do something about this war. Nobody really knows what's going on. We got to be for peace. And Tom said, let's do a show. And he got together with Tom Louvender at MATV, who was a veteran of the Vietnam War. And they got together because Tom believed in peace, as you all know. And he said, we got to let people know what's going on. Right before the war was starting, we did a live call-in show. And we got all these calls to talk about the issue. And that was Tom, understanding how to use media. As you all see in this video, he got on all the shows down here at MATV from 02148. Giving Back, Rotary in the Community, and Wellsprings of Faith, one of the very first TV shows on MATV. And then finally, what was great is Tom was never really got behind the camera, never really got involved, and he always said, Ron, let's do this. So he got involved, and just before he passed, in the Kids Video Adventure Workshop, where he helped create a set design and make the sets, and actually worked on the camera. So Tom, this is for you doing this video, and God bless you.
Hi, everybody. I don't usually wear a beret, but this is in honor of Tom, and if you see them around, he brought them back from Belize, and the family invites you to take one. But I will say, seeing his red beret here, when I first met him, and he interviewed me to work at Bread of Life as a homeless advocate, he was wearing a beret. I had just moved up from Cambridge, so I was wearing a beret. So I'm like, oh, thank God there's someone in Malden that I'm going to be able to connect with.
And I'm speaking to you today from my office in our new facility at 54 Eastern Ave in Malden. Tom started this vision in 2000, and he was able actually to see the old building demolished in August 2022 and know before he passed that it was underway and it was going to happen. So we thank Tom, and we're so happy to be in this gorgeous building. I had the privilege of journeying with Tom at Bread of Life since 1988, just 4 years after he became the doorman at the St. Paul Supper Program, as Father Jurgen has mentioned, and he was soon asked to be the director. I have to say that Tom was like a brother to me, the brother that I never had. He was a role model and a friend I truly felt that I could trust with my life. And I don't know if I could say that about maybe anyone else. He was that kind of person. I just felt like he had my back. Tom believed in action. He had no use for lip service. He was humble, pure-hearted, scrupulously honest, self-sacrificing. And he wasn't a doormat. He wasn't unassertive. He didn't have a martyr complex or whatever they call that these days. But he knew the truth that if you truly loved another person, it's going to cost you. And he was going to pay the price. Once, in the early days of Bread of Life, when we had a cash flow problem, Tom went without pay for 2 months, to my memory. Several times over the years, he opened his apartment to people who were homeless for weeks, maybe even months at a time. He lived by his principles. It didn't matter to him that people thought he was unrealistic, eccentric, out of step with the times. He continued to protest against the evils of torture, war, nuclear weapons, racism, environmental destruction. He did participate, as we heard, in many nonviolent symbolic actions that he knew would result in him being arrested and spending nights in jail. He was, in my assessment, a prophet, a witness, a voice in the wilderness.
The big plan right now is to develop the property at 54 Eastern Avenue, which would entail demolishing the building first and making us homeless for a period of time. We'd have to find some other place to serve out of and to distribute the pantry foods, but then to develop a project which would include a brand new commercial kitchen, dining room for, I believe it would seat somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 or 90 people, a food pantry, storage area, walk-in refrigerator and freezer, and offices. Obviously, we're going to have to have a place where Gabi and I and others work out of. So that's the big plan. It's a huge undertaking with all of the setbacks and the unexpected speed bumps that we run into over the course of the last couple of years. We're now looking to, if we can, we would like to be able to generate enough money that we could start to think about breaking ground next year.
Tom told me about that time in Ireland when he did the Ireland painting. And he was in such a mental state of despair that he ran into the hills crying out to God, and that God did speak to him. And that he decided to dedicate himself to following Jesus, which he did. As much as he loved telling stories, and he did, especially in his later days when he had more time, I never thought of him as a talker. I thought of him as a quiet person who kept his thoughts mainly to himself, which to me made him inscrutable at times. I would just wonder what was going on inside that head. But he let you see what was in his heart and his mind by what he did, his actions.
The next big event, I believe, for the Bread of Life is our big Walk for Bread, which is coming up on October 2nd. If you want to just give a little...
Well, the Walk for Bread...
He came prepared.
This is what they do in basketball now?
Please register online at breadoflifemalden.org, or you can download a pledge sheet, and runners register for $25 in advance. We'll have a free t-shirt for everybody, snacks and drinks.
Come on down, it's fun for the whole family.
Join us.
Hope to see everybody there.
It was the brainstorm of a woman named Andrea DeMars, who was on the first board and had been my mentor at the Tri-City Mental Health Clinic years before. But she came up with the idea of doing a walk, similar to the Walk for Hunger. And it's to raise money and also to raise awareness to the public that there is a need for hunger relief in the communities, that there are people who don't have the resources to get the food that's nutritious and healthy.
Although Bread of Life has grown greatly over the years, Tom's first love was always the evening meal. He loved to provide food for folks. Many times after the meal was finished, Tom would stay late in the kitchen making sandwiches and meals that he would distribute himself to people he knew were living on the streets. Some of those friends are here tonight. You know, that was him, thinking of them, never forgetting them, wanting to make sure that they knew that he cared and he would be there. And they looked forward to that, and they depended on that like a lifeline. I don't think I ever attended a meeting with him that he didn't show up with goodies and sweets. I don't know about the meeting with the bank president. He would buy candies on sale after every major holiday and spend a lot of time just bagging them up and distributing them to guests and volunteers and staff. On hot days at the pantry, he would walk down the serving line and he would hand out Klondike bars or hoodsies, just thinking about people standing, sweating in the sun, waiting for their groceries. I remember one time on an especially warm night at St. Paul's when we were up in the kitchen and with everybody dripping with sweat, he said, "All right, everybody, Into the van, and we headed up to Richardson's Ice Cream in Middleton. Actually, we want to thank them for providing the ice cream for this event. We got 27 gallons of ice cream, his favorite meal. I could go on and on with stories, but I am not going to. But they are linked by these threads. Tom's love for people, his humble kinship with others regardless of their situation in life, his willingness to do what it took to make their walk through this world a little easier. I will cherish my memories of Tom. I look forward to seeing Tom in God's eternal world when death will be swallowed up by life, more color. And I'm grateful I was able to walk with him, learn from him as long as I did. Thank you, and God bless you all.
In the morning when I wake up and smell the air, in the evening when I rock quietly in my chair, from when I awake until when sweet sleep takes me, I thank God that I'm free to be. I'm free to be angry loud and scream at night. I'm free to be sad and cry and turn from the light. I'm free to laugh and to love all that I see. Mostly I'm glad I'm free to be. In the morning when I wake up and smell the air, in the evening when I rock quietly in my chair, from when I awake until when sweet sleep takes me, I thank God that I'm free to be.